Namaste and bright blessings to you all. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the 7th International Conference and Gathering of Elders hosted by ICCS, International Centre for Cultural Studies. My name is Falguni, one of the national coordinators for ICCS UK, and I'll be your host for today. This weekend, we will be exploring the theme, Ancient Cultures Championing Humanity. Ancient cultures, like all diversity on our planet, is sadly under threat. Yet, these ancient cultures have the software to help us reimagine our systems and institutions that can help us make human life sustainable again and to restore our world. This conference will give us first-hand access to experts and elders from over 40 ancient traditions across the world. The gathering will also bring together a global community of activists and well-wishers like yourself who are ready to be informed, inspired, instructed to act and bring out tangible change in our communities. As mentioned earlier, the event has been organised by ICCS, which stands for International Centre for Cultural Studies. This is a non-profit organisation with a mission to facilitate the revival of diverse ancient cultures of the world by fostering a forum for learning, understanding and networking. ICCS was set up 25 years ago. It's run by volunteers and has local centres around the world from India, Indonesia, East Africa, Europe, USA, and Colombia. We come together to celebrate our similarities and differences. As Maya Angelou said, in diversity, there is beauty and there is strength. We usually host this event, this international conference, every 3 years in India. But sadly, as we all know, because of the current circumstances, that isn't possible this year. However, as the saying goes, in adversity, there is opportunity. So we are fortunate by the grace of our technology gods and goddesses to bring this conference directly to you in the comfort of your home. It's our first virtual global conference with over 650 participants registered from all over the world and across 3 time zones. I'd like to welcome you to the Europe and Africa regional part of the conference for the next 3 hours. So let's see what we have in store for you today. We have 3 different talks by our expert speakers and a panel discussion. Further details can be found on the Hoover app. Just click on the agenda section. Otherwise, during each transition, you will see a timetable for the day. During each session, there will be opportunity for you to ask questions to our speakers. For this, you will be required to submit your questions via the Hoover app. So please use the chat function and ask away any burning questions that you may have for our speakers or panelists. Without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our first speaker, Judy Ling Wong. Judy was born in Hong Kong, studied in Australia, and has been living in Europe. So she's definitely a true globalist. She is a painter, a poet, environmentalist, and the honorary president of Black Environment Network, with an international reputation as the pioneer in the field of ethnic participation in the built and natural environment. She is a major voice on policy towards social inclusion. In the year 2000, Judy was honored with the OBE for pioneering ethnic minority environmental participation. And in the year 2007, she was awarded a CBE for services to heritage. Judy will be conducting an opening ceremony followed by her talk on ancient wisdom for modern times. I'd like to pass it over to you, Judy. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I've been asked to do an opening prayer. So let us close our eyes and join together in prayer and ask for blessings for the day. In a time of great uncertainty, let us turn gently towards the light, love, and power of the source of all that is, whatever we conceive it to be. Let us open our hearts to ask for support and blessings from the source of all that is and from each other. As we think and work together today, may we be carried by the joy of being here with each other, with people of like mind. May we be sustained in all our efforts as we try to find our way. May we continue to see beauty in nature and in each other, even in our dark moments. May we learn to share all that we have, and in particular, the treasure house of wisdom to guide us on the journey of earth life. May we work together as a tower of strength and go into the world radiating the joy, the light, love, and power of the source of all that is, so that we may move as one and make the necessary difference. To end this prayer, let us in silence call for something you wish for yourself, for each of us, and then to give thanks for all that has already been given to us, and for all that will be given to us, and dedicate ourselves to the work of this conference. I will now sound a bell at the beginning and then again at the end of 20 seconds of silence. Let us come back gently and fully to begin the work of the day. When you are ready, open your eyes. So, good morning again. It is my great privilege to speak to all of you. And I'm speaking about ancient wisdom for modern times. I'm a poet, artist, and environmentalist, and I've lived in the UK since I was 24. My parents ran out of China. I was born in Hong Kong, lived in Australia for the last 2 years of school, and attended university there. I then came to Europe and lived in West Berlin as an artist, before settling in the UK in 1974. That is 47 years ago. I am a Londoner. Oh, you know, there's no glamour in any of this. Each move was a displacement. Because of my history of displacement, my identity is a global citizen. I bring to this conversation the common experience of an increasing number of people in our cities. It is an urbanizing multicultural world. In the UK, 80% of people now live in urban areas, and in London, 41% of us are from all over the world. In the 21st century, even without displacement or migration, all of us are multicultural now to some extent. With the travel, the urbanization, and the internet, the influence of world cultures are all around us. Different cultures rub shoulders with each other. When it comes to spiritual traditions, we are living in a very special era. Many of the masters of spiritual traditions are sharing their knowledge and skills, and on top of that, revealing what used to be secrets. They are telling us that this is a time of the coming together of the so-called separate traditions, a time to pool our knowledge and skills. The challenge is to forge a new integrated humanity. The dictionary tells us that wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. I wish to add to that. The fullness of wisdom satisfies our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs. And because of that richness of fulfillment, there's a massive incentive to put effort into acquiring wisdom. There are now more books and courses sharing traditional wisdom than ever before. And with the experience of COVID-19, the shift to online sharing and teaching is making all of this cheaper and even more accessible. But what are the important dimensions and contexts for the application of wisdom for the contemporary world? Ultimately, beyond nurturing and acquiring individual wisdom, it must be externalized. It is the substantial manifestation in the world as collective action, transforming the frameworks of operation within society that will help us in the present crises. The challenges are immense. COVID-19 highlights the interconnectedness of the world, which we are struggling with. Black Lives Matter is about intercultural relationships, a big, big theme. And climate change, the destruction of nature, threatening human survival. All have death and societal collapse staring us in the face. I always like to discuss concepts through the use of recent real-life examples. To think more deeply about indigenous knowledge and wisdom, I would like to use the incidents of recent wildfires across the world. In 2019 to 2020, we witnessed the most extensive and devastating wildfires in the history of our planet as a result of climate change. We watched Australia burn. We watched California, Siberia, bursting into flames completely out of control. These are the most dramatic, but there were fires everywhere. Spain, Italy was burning, Indonesia, Africa, so was the UK. I'm now going to focus on the Australian wildfires because of the great story of an Indigenous solution and all the intercultural issues around the prejudice that holds back the recognition of Indigenous knowledge and wisdom. It shows us how a science-dominated contemporary world is preventing the release of the impact of traditional wisdom on a grand scale so that it can fulfill its potential of transforming the world. This story around the burning of Australia points to the denial of the power of hidden traditional knowledge. I was especially affected by the burning of Australia. I moved to that country when I was 15 and was there for over 7 years. It was there that I first heard forests being called the bush. Because I was still in my formative years, the Australian landscape is very much part of my deep being. Seeing it burn was very emotional. I was and remain deeply affected by what happened. More than 100 bushfires ravaged Australia. Over 1 billion animals died. With the burning of Australia came the story of what came to be called cultural burning, a supreme example of Indigenous knowledge and wisdom. The story that hit the world news was about a group of First Nation elders of Australia, stricken with grief, approaching the representatives of southern Australian states about the use of traditional methods of fire management to prevent future fire disasters. They were devastated by the loss of animals, plants, trees, and entire landscapes with which they were so culturally connected. Most of us would have had the experience of starting a fire at some time in our lives. We put together materials like dry leaves, paper, and small twigs that catch fire quickly. We have all noticed that such material that catches fire quickly also burns quickly and stops unless we keep feeding it, making the fire hotter and hotter until larger things like logs put on top of the kindling finally catch fire and begin to consistently burn. This is the basic principle of the so-called cool burns of the forest debris that stands at the center of the methodology of cultural burning. The repeated regular burning of ground-level debris with cool fires means that there is never enough on the forest floor that will allow a fire to become so hot that it burns the trees. The concept is simple and powerful. However, traditional cultural burning is not only about fire prevention. It is set within deep cultural connections with the land, all its living creatures, and the sustaining of the livelihood and the spiritual vision of the people. It is infused with the wisdom of creating balance. Cultural burning is a sacred process of interaction and communion with nature, particularly with the element of fire. Permission to burn has to come from the wise elders that scrutinize the process. Spiritual connections are made. The indigenous custodians apply ochre to their faces and bodies with gravitas. Weather conditions are sensitively observed. They choose a day when the wind is blowing in the right direction and pay attention to other weather conditions, such as the desirable prospect of rain arriving within a few days. Then they light and walk with the fire. They watch the fire while being totally spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically connected with the land, its living inhabitants, and its spirit. It is a process full of beauty and meaning. As more areas of fire die, additional areas are lit as they walk. They purposefully create a fire mosaic so that wildlife can escape. The ash from the fires feed the soil, and the fire-adapted seeds explode into life. New green growth provide more food for animals and the bushland. Full of new ground-level greenery, it is actually cooler. The fire never becomes hot enough to burn the trees. The canopy itself is therefore protected. This regular use of cool fires to clear the ground is a bushfire prevention element of cultural burning that the science-dominated and disaster-focused minds of modern society latch onto. But cultural burning goes further than that. The use of fire is specific to each location, designed with sophistication through intimate knowledge of the local range of animals and plants, combined with the physical needs of the people for food, for materials for arts and crafts, with elaborate totemic and cultural ceremonies evolved over time as part of their socio-cultural identity. Regular burning purposefully increases food on the forest floor to feed the animals that are caught or hunted. For food, various areas may incorporate the encouragement of conditions for particular local food crops through different timing and patterns of burning. Beyond the forest itself, grasslands have also been fire managed for wildlife and for food. In between burning, spiritual activities and ways of seeing and living rhythmically mark the connections to land and living things as a consistent part of community life. The indigenous peoples have always been against the contemporary Western methods of clear burning areas, such as fire breaks, as doing so kills off all the trees and the many animals. They point out that such mass damage is unnecessary and ineffective, as a key feature of eucalyptus is the oil contained in the tree. Burning at high temperatures, the trees explode and fireballs are propelled across significant distances, often jumping fire breaks. Recently, when the First Nation Australian elders went to meet with the governing bodies of the southern states, cultural burning was not unknown to them. In the most fire-prone areas of North Australia, there are established ongoing programs of the use of cultural burning. Australia is a huge country, with temperate areas in the south, ranging to the tropics of the north. As a result of the use of cultural burning in the north, they have statistics of the effectiveness of cultural burning over time. Indigenous custodians have been working for years alongside scientists, park rangers, private conservation groups, and pastoralists with the joint aim to protect the habitat. Together, they are building better ways to manage fire. The publication, The Conversation, calls the work in Northern Australia the world's best fire management system. Underpinning the theme of wildfire management is the survival of people, nature, and culture seen through the lens of First Nation peoples. Since I first heard about the story of cultural burning in Australia, a country with which I have a special relationship, I've come across parallel stories of the struggle to maintain cultural burning practices across the world, including the recent controversy about traditional heather burning in the UK. The most prominent stories, alongside the Australian one, are stories of First Nation peoples in Canada and the United States of America, because their traditions are still strong, cohesive, living heritage. There's a continual tension across the world in the context of the use of indigenous knowledge that is grafted piecemeal onto areas with non-indigenous land managers with the exclusion of the cultural perspectives. Fortunately, traditional knowledge and wisdom, though struggling, is still alive enough to help us to consider shifting our vision to approach this treasure with new eyes. To design ways of living in balance with the natural world is the height of wisdom. Both nature and people flourish. As an artist, I'm very aware that only a small range of our sensibilities are awake in modern life, and very little of it is welded to the elaborate knowledge that can create a finely nuanced relationship emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually to the detail and the rhythms of our immediate surroundings. It is us as modern people that are becoming primitive and moving backwards through the restrictions placed on the fulfillment of our full range of potential. This level of engaged knowledge and wisdom demonstrated by Indigenous peoples can only be possible through the accumulation of the experience and wisdom of whole communities over many, many lifetimes. No one can gather knowledge and experience and create such a sophisticated and highly evolved system alone or within a single lifetime. The experience of being exposed to these stories, even at a distance, of aspects of cultural burning has broken open something in me, a kind of longing for all that has been culturally lost across our materialistic and narrow experience of the modern world. I recognize more clearly what we need to put back into place, a kind of educational experience that is about the awakening of the intimacy with which we relate to everything, and how we may read what is around us in a way that is crucial to our spiritual well-being, and the nurturing of attitudes that lead to wisdom that protects the world and ourselves. The answer to changing our direction will come from the internal resources of our deep being. Modern life is so frantic. Our attention is often engaged with demanding activities that are by comparison empty of content. We have to deal with lots of facts that stand only as facts and nothing else. It is bleak. The word spiritual is a loaded word now. One can hardly use it in the days of the modern world without suffering from various negative connotations. There's nothing wrong with science in itself because it's an expression of an aspect of our consciousness. But its absolute dominance has created a tyranny towards the manifestation of the range of human sensibilities, with the outcome that we may be robbed of our full humanity. Does it have to be like this? I am an artist and environmentalist, and I believe that at the center of being an artist lies a purpose to nurture the aliveness of being, a state of aliveness within which we aspire to enact the pleasure of our entire range of sensibilities to connect fully with nature and people. Artists should inspire a fullness of living to the extent that society feels we cannot live without it. The story of cultural burning and its deep socio, cultural, environmental, human context has for me deepened this conviction. Wisdom is not a stand-alone quality. It is based on the supreme connection made possible by our aliveness. In the 21st century, the need for love, for nature, and for people at the level of passion is fundamental. There are so many apparently urgent life concerns around us now in our modern world that without passion, that loving enactment in the name of people and nature will not rise to the top of the agenda. In 2006, I was at the retirement dinner of the director of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in southwest London, the marvelous gardens that house the largest and most diverse botanical and mycological collections in the world. The dinner was at Sir Peter Crane's home, a lodge set inside the grounds of the gardens as a privilege for generations of directors and their families. Towards the end of his parting speech, he said, "The only people that know what sustainability really is and live it fully are Indigenous peoples. It is the greatest sadness of my professional career that we may not be able to capture the detail of that specific relationship to the natural world before that knowledge and wisdom disappears. But we can try. We can take inspiration from what there is of the living heritage of Indigenous wisdom. We can endeavor to live from a basis of wisdom anchored in a love for nature and people at the level of passion. It is a worthy challenge to redesign our societal frameworks and look forward to the rich and fulfilling vision of living in balance with nature. Thank you for listening. I think now we're going to move on to questions.
Thank you so much, Judy, for a very insightful talk there. Definitely posed a lot of questions for us and got us thinking. So, we have received quite a few questions from our audiences. And I just want to remind our audiences out there, if you do have any questions for any of our speakers, please go onto the Hoover platform, onto the app, and you can submit your questions on there. So the first question, Judy, for you is a question from Jonathan, and he's asking, did you have any encounters with Indigenous Australian cultural heritage when you were living in Australia that you'd like to share with us?
Now, that is a very interesting question, because the answer is that when I lived in Australia as a young woman, I never came across a single First Nation person.
Right.
And that shows the state of the world, of the still continuing cultural oppression of First Nation peoples, and their tremendous history of wisdom and knowledge, which through the wildfires, the Western science-dominated peoples have been pushed to confront their neglect and begin to take it seriously. But when they take it seriously, what do? They pick out the element that's just about the prevention and not the entire system that enabled the methodology and the whole way of life to evolve. I think that is the lesson and the world situation that we really have to address.
And I must agree with you on that, because even when I went traveling, I hardly saw any of the First Nation people until I went to Central Australia. That's when I got to see them, and even the way they were living was, yeah, it was like second class citizens. So it really is disturbing to see that. So thank you for your insight there. Now, Marta's asked a question. Being close to nature has many benefits, health and mental well-being. How do we foster people's connection to nature and spirituality in the urban environment?
That is one of the most important questions. At the Habitat 3 United Nations meeting, the then Deputy Secretary General actually said, the future of sustainability is a battle that will be fought in the cities, won or lost in the cities. And when we listen to that, we must look at the fact that so many of us, I'm 71, it was a different world. In our childhood and so on, there were many opportunities to be in connection with nature than now. As I see the generations go on, the urban world is a world in which children are increasingly distant from nature. And what the Secretary General was saying was that, people that are fighting for the natural world at the moment are living on that past of the mature generations. If we don't pay attention to contact with nature within our cities and purposefully plant trees, create parkland, green spaces, take young children to our most magnificent landscapes outside the city and so on, we will not build that love for nature. And without that love for nature, they will not fight for it. Because in 30 years of working with participation in the environment, I can collapse the process into two short phrases. We love what we enjoy, and we protect what we love. You cannot enjoy it if you're not in contact with it. If you're not in contact with it, you won't love it. If you don't love it, you don't fight for it. It's completely a human process. So I have a continuing plea to people in cities to pay attention where children are, school grounds where they've spent so much of their time. Plant things, do outdoor learning, do all the things that lay down the foundations for our younger citizens to become citizens that love and fight for nature.
Absolutely, such an important point there. Really well said there, Judy. And it takes us nicely onto our next question, which is, how do we expose young people to ancestral wisdom? Would it be through schools? Would it be through specialist summer camps? I mean, how would you propose such an idea? And also the connection with nature as well, which you've touched upon as well.
Well, we meet together today like-minded and very aware people. We understand this. We understand the importance of indigenous wisdom and the idea of wisdom as a whole. You know, how you enable people to sense wisdom and to experience it is really important. And children learn through experience. So how community acts, how you bring people together and give them experiences of the importance of wisdom and how it plays out through your activities, how you are shaped by wisdom in the world is extremely important. But of course, again, I come back to schools because in a way, children spend, 3/4 of their lives with school and schoolwork and so on. So there is a thing about what is the curriculum of education. There are huge fights going on at the moment. For example, in the UK, a very young group of people just out of school and young university students have formed themselves into a group called Teach the Future. And this is about teaching about climate change because they have realized how important it is. And they know that without that kind of curriculum, we're not exposing people young enough to begin to shape how they think and feel and so on. And equally, as communities and so on, we need to campaign for the awareness and the infusion of how we teach and what we teach in school that enables young children and young people to be in touch with the experience and the impact of wisdom. When they are, I tell you, it's like nature. If you let people into it, nature will do its job for you. It's so beautiful. You don't have to do anything. Just put them there. Nature will do the job of inspiring them. Wisdom is the same. If you expose people to the experience of wisdom, they're inspired. It stays with them. But that wisdom experience must be where young people are, in schools, in youth clubs, in the community, and the awareness of the community, their parents, their grandparents, and so on.
Brilliant. And I'll just ask you the last question as we are running out of time. So how do we practically get the voice of elders and ancient traditions heard by institutions? And that's a question by Sejin.
That is a role that is opening up for us. Because of our crises, we're being pushed to think about things that are actually about wisdom. Look at COVID-19. What does it tell us? The interconnectedness of the world. The wise people always knew. Do we need COVID-19 to tell us? No. And so we can use these recent stories. Again, COVID-19 is an environmental stories. We have pandemics because we're encroaching upon nature. We're pushing wildlife and people closer and closer in a way that the diseases that used to be separated now jump species into the human population.
Brilliant.
An environmental issue. We must not damage nature. We must not encroach upon nature. So some of the most topical and important issues that politicians and institutions have to grapple with, wisdom is at the center of it. The solutions are about wisdom and connection to people and nature.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Judy. It's definitely an insightful talk there and a great start to our event. So thank you to Judy Ling Wong for our first talk. Now that is the end of our first session, and we will now take a quick short break. And we'll be back with you in a few minutes. So go and grab yourself a cup of tea because we've got a very interesting panel discussion coming up next for you. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back from the break to our 7th International Conference and Gathering of Elders. So the one thing we do love about these conferences is to meet new and old faces. And despite the fact we can't physically meet, we have chosen a platform, the Hoover app, which does enable us to connect with fellow participants of this conference. So please do, if you've not downloaded the app yet, definitely I would recommend it, because that way you can actually connect with fellow attendees, and there are some interesting discussions going on as well within the app. So, and then I would like to remind you as well, this is an interactive session. We want you to ask your burning questions or any questions. No question is a silly question. So have comfort in that. We'll be more than happy to answer any of the questions you have for our speakers. So get on board, get interacting with us. Our moderators are waiting to take your questions. So the next coming up next is a panel discussion on applying ancient wisdom to modern challenges. This session will be chaired by Drishti May. Drishti is currently the president of the National Hindu Students Forum in the UK, which is the largest Hindu student movement outside of India. Founded 29 years ago, NHSF UK is active in almost half of all the universities in the UK and reaches over 10,000 students annually through its activities. Drishti is a graduate of chemistry and now works in M&A integration at Unilever in the UK. So over to you, Drishti.
Namaste, and thank you so much, Falguni Ben, for that introduction. Namaste, everyone who are tuning in from all across the world, and welcome to this panel titled Applying Ancient Wisdom to Modern Challenges. I'm really delighted to join you here for the 7th International ICCS conference this Saturday. My name is Drishti, and I am delighted to join you from the UK alongside an esteemed panel of highly educated and wonderfully warm seekers, who I will introduce in just a moment. Before that, a little bit more about our topic. Today, we live in a world that is filled with challenges: social, political, environmental, intense polarization, the list goes on. And in amongst this unrest, all of us are seeking the same thing. We seek peace, happiness. We wish to better our world and leave it in a state better than what we found it, rather than harm it. And so in this inquiry and on this journey, it is only natural that we try and seek answers from every direction to try and find the truth in every perspective of the world. And so this session will explore what is the wisdom that we can extract from the world's oldest traditions. What values are evergreen and ever relevant to our world and her challenges? And what ought we, as children of the earth, look to embrace and uphold? To help us discover this, to walk closer to some of these truths, we have a wonderful panel of 3 speakers joining us for the next hour. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Konrad Elst. Dr. Konrad Elst joins us from near Brussels today, where he was actually born, an Oriental philologist and historian. Today, he teaches, albeit virtually, at the Sanchi University in India, and he maintains a deep affinity with his home culture and has been fascinated for a number of years by man's pursuit of the divine and spirituality. Welcome, Dr. Konrad Elst.
Good morning.
Well, our second speaker, I will just go ahead and introduce the rest of the speakers, and then we'll open up for opening remarks. Thank you. The second speaker that I'd like to introduce today is Dr. Numugubu. Dr. Numugubu is a former principal of a high school and educated here in the UK. Today, she's a cultural activist and the founder of the Nomkulbulwane Center and Youth Development Center. She seeks to promote a revival of the spiritual world and pride in one's own heritage and traditions. Welcome, Dr. Numugubu, to this panel. Finally, our third speaker joining us for the discussion is Dr. Ram Vaidya, who hails from Nagpur, Maharashtra, India. Whilst his home base may be here in the UK in Leicester, he's a true citizen of the world and joins us today from Tanzania. He is the International Joint Coordinator for Hindu Swam Civic Sangh and has a Master's in Sanskrit, for which he is a gold medalist, a PhD in Integral Humanism, Jainism, and Vedanta. Welcome, Dr. Ramji.
Morning. Namaste.
I'd now like to invite each of our speakers in turn to offer us remarks before we get into the discussion. Over the next 55 minutes or so, we'll dive in deep into the discussion at hand, and we will also have an opportunity to hear from you and your questions through the Hoover app. So as we go through, please do let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, questions you'd like to answer, and we'll be sure to put these forward to our speakers today. Dr. Elst, if you'd like to offer us your opening remarks.
Right. So I am essentially one of the numerous Westerners who are ex-Christians. It's mostly my generation that practically left the church collectively, 1970 thereabouts. And so we were faced with the search for the God-shaped hole in our worldview. And so I was interested, but not very particularly, not attached to any movement. I worked in a New Age bookshop, and so I got to see the whole neo-pagan scene and the Hare Krishna scene and everything that was happening outside the church. Nevertheless, I didn't commit myself to anything until I got to know Ram Swarup, an Indian philosopher. And so it's he who advised me. You see, the rediscovery of pre-Christian religion is a very important thing. So make yourself useful on that front. And so I joined a group that was just being founded, Tradition. And, I was quite interested. However, I was immediately faced with one of the problems that the neo-pagan scene, especially in America and in some European countries, has, which is that it was quite politically compromised. And so in the first years, I was on a personal crusade against that, telling everyone that, you see, this was not at all in the spirit of the ancestors that they wanted to follow. Like, they were not xenophobic. Of course, they were more limited geographically. Their reach was not what it is today, but they were not against anything foreign on principle. So I thought, you see, this was a bit of an aberration. Now, gradually that has gone away, not so much because of my own intervention, but because people who wanted to do politics, they lost interest, as our group was taking religion more and more seriously. So the present generation doesn't know anything anymore about its beginning, and perhaps fortunately so. Some people suggested we should make a clean break and reconstitute the whole group. That, I think, was not a good idea because as Indians, like some of you certainly know, the lotus flower in India is also called Pankaja, born from the mud. And so if we have an unpleasant starting history, well, so be it. You see, it's okay, we've outgrown that. And so we should not disown our history. We should simply make clear that we've outgrown it. So now you see, this is just one of the numerous neo-pagan initiatives in Europe. In the beginning, it was rather oriented towards this Asatru movement that you find in Scandinavia, the Germanic gods. Now it is much less so, in the sense that spirituality is everywhere. You need not focus on a book, not even the Edda. The world is sacred, and there are many occasions for sacredness. And so, to wind up, as a French sociologist, Emile Durkheim, has defined religion, it is essentially awe for the sacred. And so that is there. And so we explore that, guided to some extent by what our ancestors did, both Celtic and Germanic, but partly also simply by what is pertinent in our own lives in the modern age.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Alt. Dr. Numagugu, if we can invite you to make your opening remarks, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I think you may be on mute. Awesome.
Yes, this is Dr. Noma Kukungobese, and I'm a very highly spiritual person, and I'm an academic as well, but I focused in reviving Nomkhubulwane. Others call her the goddess of rain, the goddess of fertility, the goddess of puberty. And when I was doing my research in the university, I found that my focus was looking at the goddess of Rome, Ceres and Demeter through the festivals. And I saw that the festivals are just as similar. Although when my ancestors were driving me to help girls to get their self-esteem, not to get active in sexual activity, to empower them, because they told me that all women, by virtue of their birth, they are given that status of managing everything. And in homes, everyone knows. But we need those good self-esteem women who can run many things in this world with their own power, the power that Mvenqangi has given, Nomkhubulwane has given it to them. Ancestors with their skills and various dimensions can help the society, the families, and whatsoever. I've done a lot of workshops. I'm a volunteer because while I was struggling with reviving this, there were many challenges. And I'm looking at this ancient, which my counterparts were saying, I'm bringing things of the past. They cannot help anyone today. I said, but when we talk about how nature preserves the growth of a young person until adulthood, those things cannot change. They are ancient. So if we put them together, we are going to have a good society with good morals. Not necessarily only girls only, but I must say that I've done a lot of, I did that research with the University of Pietermaritzburg in KZN, and the challenges that followed, like students, scholars coming from all over the world to see what is it bad that people are, because it was said in the media, what I'm reviving is something that cannot be relevant today. They kept talking to their PhDs everywhere, but to my surprise, when they are sitting with me, when they are interviewing these girls, they found that there's nothing wrong, in fact, because a human being should have discipline, should educate he or herself. So that is my fundamentals. And in fact, revived the indigenous religion. The word religion to me, it's not relevant to us. It's the way we live. It's the way our ancestors live to make everything good. like our norms and values. The jobs that girls and the boys as well. But I stick to the girls because I was told by my ancestors that the women folk are the people who nurtures the society.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nimibibu. Ramji, if we can move on to you for your opening remarks, please.
Morning, and thanks for inviting me for this esteemed conversation here. So whenever we think of today's title, basically, there's a one word called modern society. So modern society normally we equate with the urban society, the city-based lifestyle. That is fine. But second thing also we add to the modern society called advancement of that one. So whenever we think of the modern society, we think of the urban society, and at the same time we think it's an advanced society. That making them as an advanced society is our problem. And whenever we think of the nature-based society, we always think that we are going to be backwards, back to the nature. No, it should not be the back to the nature, it should be the forward to the nature. And that's why the two concepts are there.
Mm-hmm.
One is whenever we think of this, the nature-based society or nature-based traditions, what do they believe in? So one thing they believe that whatever is a natural, we should adopt. And what is a natural thing? That there is the one energy, oneness, something which is one in the entire universe. When I open my eyes in the morning and I see around me 360 degree, I see the sun. Sometime in the nighttime, I see the moon, the stars. I see the society around me, the people around me, my parents, my family, the house, advancement, even the computer as well. All those things I see it. And then I realized that, well, I share the planet with all those entities. This is called the natural thinking. And when I see the sun, as an example, I can tell you, when I say, oh, wow, this sun has given the light to me. He's my friend. He's illuminous. He's a Bhaskara. He's a Mitra. When I connect with the sun, a natural entity, and become a part of my life, that type of society we call the traditions we call as a nature-based traditions. And therefore, all the traditions which are based on the nature, they believe that the entire world is connected to me. That's one of the concept. And when we think of the modern society, which is a city-based society, urban society, they started believing in the artificial thing, artificial knowledge, artificial the concepts. And one of the concepts, which is the artificial concept, says that the man has developed the entire society. So the man is the center of the society, and therefore man can exploit and conquer the entire society or the world. So these two norms are there working in the present day. I don't want to go to the very intellectual discussion, but one word we can add to understand, to explain the modern society or the issues of the modern society, the challenges of the modern society, that word is called extremism. Extremism in all sectors is the issue. And a solution for that, going towards the nature-based society, traditions, because nature-based traditions will teach us how to connect, how to be with everything. We can use the technology, we can use even the robots, but all the technology has its own place. When we think that technology is the highest, that's called extremism. But each and every entity has its own place to play in the entire world. Then that is called as a nature-based traditions. Nature-based traditions has one amazing concept that they accept the entity as a divinity. If I see the tree in front of me, and I see that the tree has given is giving the every cell of the tree is for the society, for the people, for the others. I always respect the tree with utmost divinity. Similar way, even if my car, my computer, my house, they have provided me a safety, a security, and therefore I will put some divinity in the house, in the computer, in the technology. That putting the divinity in the technology will create that harmony between the me and the society. I think this is the solution for the modern society, which nature-based traditions have provided. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramji. So I'm rearing to get straight into it with all of us. So we will all now be part of a discussion before we open up to Q&A. So the first question I'd like to ask, reflecting on your opening remarks, the first question I'd like to ask is to you, Dr. Elst. You talked about your journey and you talked about your exploration and inquiries. So I have a question, which is, how relevant in your worldview are these ancient traditions in modern Europe, and what can they, if anything, offer to society?
Yeah, well, in backwaters like Belgium is one, you don't see too much of it yet. In places like Lithuania, Latvia, or Iceland, uh, the pagan revivalist traditions have already gained a serious foothold in society. Like in Reykjavik, an Odinist temple has come up. So, we are not at that stage yet. You see, we are just hobbyists getting together and exploring ancient and modern tradition. Now, I like to specify that it's not just ancient traditions, whichever is part of the sacred, including Christian stuff. You have to look through the veneer of Christian dogma. For instance, my two boys have recently walked in a procession called the Hanswijk procession in the city of Mechelen. And, that's for the Virgin Mary. But in fact, if you read the history of how this procession came about, it's really a local, nature goddess who is being worshipped and whom the church transformed into the Virgin Mary. So, we also have to reclaim these traditions, because ultimately, you see, there is a continuity with ancient times, with our ancestors, that in the case of Europe, inevitably goes through a phase of Christianity. But you see that it's important to see that that was not a total rupture. The ancient gods are still with us. And so now, yes, they are being more consciously revived. Is that relevant? Well, is religion at all relevant? Here maybe we are a bit, distorted in our view by the history of Christianity that made this clear distinction between the religious sphere and the worldly sphere. Um, so that in most ancient cultures is not so separate, not so distinct. But I mean, before it becomes really relevant to society, there is some way to go. Right now we are exploring and growing and experimenting. So in our country, I'd say we are not that far yet. Though, of course, in the private sphere, it becomes relevant. I mean, the disappearance of Christianity, to occasional American readers, I'd like to emphasize that in Europe, really, Christianity is in most parts of society a thing of the past, which means that people are looking for something. And so there is a system of legitimation of norms and so on that has gone missing, and that is not being adequately replaced by anything. So here you see the different experiments with religion, the different attempts to revive religiosity. Each are relevant, but that's incremental. It'll add up to something serious in the middle long term.
Thank you. And I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit more in just a moment, actually, with what are some of those values that we can extract from the process of revival and the journey to that revival too. Dr. Namagugu, I'd like to come to you, and I'd like to bring in reflections from Dr. Elst and also Ramji from their responses and their opening remarks. You told us quite a bit, I think, about the culture that you're seeking to revive. Could you reflect on the modern challenges that Africa has today and how some of those evergreen values still apply and what they might be in addition to discipline and education that you mentioned earlier?
Yes. Taking at capitalism, because if there is capitalism, capitalists insist in many things that are not grounded, especially in our norms and values. We are looking at high rate of teenagers who are having children very early. We are looking at even at our environment here in Africa, which has been torn apart by apartheid mechanism, like what my doctor have just mentioned. You know, when they injected their Christianity religion, it was one of the mechanisms to soften the indigenous people of my country. So there's a lot when we are looking at global warming, and we look as well at science. Science is good sometimes, but science is fatal. When we look at the changes of the weather, we look at the changes of that affects people with floods. We look at the external conditions affecting the growth of plants that we like most, like the trees that my doctor has just mentioned. I know that trees are alive. You can talk to a tree when you are having, in my spiritual world, when you are having problems, and you at night you receive some good dreams that tell you what to do when things are just like this. So I mean, everything has turned upside down, and I like if we can do the renaissance, especially the spiritual world. Our indigenous spiritual world has been torn apart because people don't believe in it, but it is working for us even now, and it can work for them in terms of droughts. We go in mountains, we pray there, we do offerings. Those offerings were done by our ancestors, and the rain just, it drizzles, it rains. Same time, we don't talk about something that sometimes scientists are saying you cannot prove spirituality, you cannot prove whatever, and they forget that when you are being conceived in your mother's womb, there are two spiritual beings there, the mothers and the fathers. That's why there is similarities of an infant between these two couples. So I'm saying there's a lot. Even our identities have been ruined apart because they think ancient wisdom, there's nothing like that. It's just like a fairy tale. So to me, I'm saying it will be good to those people like me and others that we have our own renaissance, because to my experience, I do workshops in various places, in groups, in communities, and when people are listening and there are questions and the answers that are tangible, we are talking about tangible things without the tools that are being used by the scientists, because our minds, our ancestors are here in our minds. So even if there is a patient who is very sick, I can say that we are having this and this in the spiritual world. Make the renaissance of it.
Thank you.
These opportunities to go to schools so that our youngsters can know who they are.
No, absolutely.
because we were made to be useless, not to have that we are living in an ancient wisdom, but the ancient wisdom is very great. Look at the water. The water is natural. It's natural. Oxygen is natural. You know, there's a lot that we must pay respect to it so that we live side by side, not that the physical life and the spiritual world and the norms and values are just there. There will be no children roaming in the streets as it is now in various countries of the world. But we have just lost a lot because of education. Education is good, but the way it was injected to the people, you know, it made a lot of havoc. So I'm saying I'm agreeing in various ways that other things is how people they believe in it, but you cannot touch. But when we talk about ancient wisdom, you are communicate in dreams, even not in dreams. While I'm sitting here, I'm able to see other things that people cannot see, and people, you know, in terms of trouble, even the wells. When we look at what happened when the seas were in high flight, high tides, you see. So there are things that are so rooted that people cannot understand. But if we are given chances to display that this is working, because our ancestors defined the way how to live. I cannot change now to be another color, but the mere fact that our God has given us different ways of praising.
I think we may just be experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty. So thank you, Dr. Nomagugu. I'm going to reflect on some of what you've said, and it sounds like we now live in a world that is so information rich. We've made progress in science. Our education is increasing in quality day by day. Yet we seem to be alienated. Reflecting on Ramji, your point earlier, alienated from nature, alienated from the application of some of this knowledge. Could you perhaps reflect on and talk to us about how we respond to this alienation of man? What is our duty in the midst of standing, with this rich past that in some ways has been lost and is going through a revival and renaissance that we've touched on in different parts of the world, and this moving forward with nature? If we stand in the middle of this space, what is our duty? What is our responsibility? How do we respond to be able to move forward with nature, as you alluded to earlier?
There are two entities, A and B, for example. One is called experiencer, who experience, and one is the one thing which is going to be experienced. So our experience is basically with having two things. Somebody is experiencing something to be experienced, and someone is experiencer. For example, there is a woman standing in front of me. There are 3-4 women are there. Biologically, they are all are same. But now I'm experiencing biologically as a material, that is a different thing. But the moment I see the mother in that one woman, my behavior towards that woman will change. Means my experience towards that woman will be different. Similarly, a daughter, a sister, a mother, a wife, anything. And therefore, same biological matter will differ according to how I experience it. So physically, they might be similar, how I see it. Similarly, I remember one thing in my childhood. In the evening, if I used to pluck the flower or to touch the tree, my mother used to say, "Don't touch now because the tree is sleeping." How come the trees can sleep? But that concept was there, and therefore in the morning when I used to get there and see the blossom of the tree on the tree, I used to say, "The tree is awake now." So tree is material, and how I see the tree, that experience matters. And that's why the world will remain as it is. I will remain as it is. But the concept is that experiencer and the thing to be experienced, if this nature tuning we will enhanced with all the generation, the things will start seeing differently.
Yeah, I can totally resonate with some of what you've just shared, Ramji. So it seems though, as we go through the revival of these traditions, our psychology is really powerful. How we connect with nature, how we embrace education, science, discipline, some of these values that have been referred to, and then translate them into our everyday actions through the relationships we form is what I'm sensing from this. No, wonderful. I think we are at the halfway mark and the chat has been going very intensely with the questions coming through from the audience. So thank you to everyone who's already submitted a question. If you haven't, please head over to the Hoover app and ask your question to any of our panelists or to all, and we'll be sure to put forward as many as we can. I'm going to open up with a question for Dr. Namagugu. One of the questions that has come through is, you mentioned, this has come from Jonathan, you mentioned several challenges you faced whilst reviving the noble ethos of your ancestors. Could you tell us more about these challenges and how you are overcoming them?
Yes, the challenges that we are facing is the people who have just lost who they are. Secondly, when we look at the books or the textbooks that are, there's nothing, no writers are writing about us, about that depth that goes with us spiritually. But I must say that I fought because I had many machines in my province. And at the end of the day, I was able to go through, because right now I've got a lot, it's not followers, but the people who are living the legacy, especially the young people and both the young and the adults.
I think we may just...
They don't, yeah.
Are you back with us? We just have a few connection issues, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, please carry on. Please carry on.
Oh, yes. And I've done this until I took the whole memorandum to the president. I did. And I asked, where do we belong as indigenous people of this country when the constitution is failing us? And all what it is in the constitution is for rain. And I said, so you must leave us in peace because you are not even there in the constitution. So we are practicing prayers in mountains where we like it, prayers in the falls, because we know that God has created a lot of things that help us. Down in the falls, we worship there. In the valleys, we go there because there's the spirituality is there everywhere. And I like it that after a long journey, before I die, there are various changes, and now the government is coming bit by bit to us. You talked about this, but we didn't take care of it. I said, look at nature, look at the floods. We wouldn't have experiencing floods and lightning that kills people if you know that our way of life can prevent this. And I mean, the changes, there are changes right now, and I would like sometimes, if when I'm having these big festivals, some of you come and just observe it and see that we have fertility, we have young people come there and they perform, and we thank for the harvest as well. And there's a lot, because Mother Nature Mother Nature needs, respect to everything. Because even when we are dead, Mother Nature take care of us. So people is now they are realizing because some of the things that they thought they are better cannot help them at all. So the more we are dedicated to who we are, our God will help, and Mother Nature will be with us because is living.
Thank you.
Let me.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to another question that's just come in. Dr. Eltz, this one is for you. With secularism sweeping the world that we live in, it seems that this world is very good at taking parts of ancient wisdom, for example, yoga, and extracting the postures from the philosophy of yoga. However, these movements and these initiatives seem to reject the spirituality. Could you reflect on this? How do we go forward and what do we do about this?
Yeah, I absolutely recognize the problem, but I'm not that negatively impressed in the sense that this problem is of course there, but there is clearly an evolution towards better quality. This is both true in the case of the importation of Eastern traditions like yoga, like Chinese Qigong, uh, but it's also true in the rediscovery of ancient European traditions. There is a very clear, very marked increase in quality. When you go back to like the 60s, 70s, when this was all in a childhood phase, you see it is what is taught now is one, far more historically accurate, and two, also far better dosed in terms of what it can mean for us today. You see, it's not a carnival. It's not pretending to be the Druids and so on. No, you see, this is something of modern people. To some extent, neo-paganism is a modern religion. Like, I don't see anyone advocating a return to human sacrifice, for instance. Not far from where I live, there is a place where people were sacrificed, and because of the nature of the soil, corpses are well preserved. So sometimes you see they discover a corpse of someone who was ritually painted and so on, and then sacrificed to the gods. That's what our ancestors did. Now, obviously, I don't see anyone uh, wanting to revive that, and I suppose fortunately so. So, of course, by nature, it is some sort of a selection. And you see, anciently it was like that too. It's not like you have the Edda or the Mabinogion or something, and that everybody in those days was following the book, trying to live that way. No, you see, that's just a momentary glimpse of one of the many things that were happening in those days. So in those days, you see, there were many sects, and not sects that you were a lifelong member of, but movements in religion and so on, and people were a member of both or all three of them, or swapping, or it was a free world. Because of Christianity, we've gotten used to the idea that religion is a fixed set, is a box where you're either in or out, with fixed beliefs and so on. It was not like that. And so what I see now in the neo-pagan scene is a return to this openness. Here and there are a few people who have the Christian spirit and try to project it into the pagan heritage, and also are very, book oriented and, very sectarian. But that's rare, and I think that's going out. So there too, you see, I see a very positive evolution going on.
So almost like a positive spiral, even though it doesn't always feel like progress, there is an evolution in play in your worldview.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. The next question that we have, so Ramji, this one is for you. We talk about urbanization, we talk about advancement in technology, so on and so forth. So Arakali is asking, how do we handle the challenges that manifest from this new world, from excessive digital invasion in our lives, and then still pursue a nature-based life? How do we balance it, and what advice would you give?
There is a way that if we want to make any line smaller, do not touch that line. That line is very sparky. It could give you a shock. But make a line underneath that line, which is quite longer than that line. The longer the line we make it, the smaller the line, that present line will be. And therefore, rather than touching upon all those problems of modern days we are facing, and very attractive issues are there, we have to create a big, longer line of our spirituality. And therefore, the debate can start. And one word, basically, for anything called education, education, education. Education will create the everything. And therefore, we need to educate the masses now, not the classes, the masses, towards this whole notion. People will change because it is so natural. It is, like Dr. Els also mentioned, that people are changing, they're adopting. Now we need to make sure that we are heading towards the right direction. So I'm very optimistic about that one. And only thing is that we need to draw the longer line of the spirituality. No need to criticize all the time what is the present scenario is.
So effectively, can we align ourselves with a bigger cause, seek to not necessarily ignore our problems, but put them in the wider context of bigger challenges that we can align ourselves to, if I've understood the line analogy correctly?
Yes, correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. One more question, and Dr. Elst, one for you, because I think you've touched on this several times. As we talk about this movement in Renaissance and revival, we have direct experiences and we have that which we read about. I know Dr. Nomagugu mentioned earlier that we often don't find ourselves represented. We don't find ourselves accurately portrayed either. So as we go about this experience, and we've got historical records, we've got narratives that exist, and we've got our own spiritual and direct experience, how do we reconcile those experiences, and how do we know what wisdom to follow? Could you reflect on that?
Yes. Well, you see, having by profession exposed myself a little bit to what comes from India, I am of course impressed with the scope of it. You know, there you have a very thorough system of spirituality, again in many forms, but quite deep. Not in many forms in the sense of fragmented and anything goes. No, it's a very serious thing. And it goes together with a whole culture, a specific kind of music and dance and festivals and so on. So in a way, Europe before Christianity must have been like that. So we really have a long way to go. Then again, many of the things that are happening only need a little finishing touch to fit into this spiritual landscape again. So it's not like people are wholly missing in that spiritual dimension. You know, to some extent, what we have to do is simply to discover what is there and to bring it to light. You know, what spiritual tradition? I do think personally that the age of identity in spirituality is over. You see, as I said in my beginning years, you see, I was up in arms against this identity movement that was present in quite a few neo-pagan organizations. And so, I mean, in those days it counted as rightist, today it counts as leftist identity. But anyway, I think this identity is just a false problem. Identity is just there. You see, by what you do for good reasons, like religion, you automatically do certain things and not do other things, which gives you an identity. But, you know, identity is not a thing in itself. It's not something that you do something for. You know, identity is just automatic. So I concentrate on the big one, you see. Now here, of course, there are still, as I said, awe for the sacred. That is the essence of religion. Discovering the sacredness in things. Then you have certain more specific goals, like what is called in Hinduism liberation, nirvana, and so on. That's a bit high, a bit distant. That will not be for everyone. But nevertheless, this awe for the sacred, that is absolutely a generality. You see, people will discover that in their own lives. Even people without any religious education and so on will have experience that stop them and make them wonder.
Thank you. I think we are coming up right to the end. It's amazing how quickly time has passed. So Dr. Elst, I'm going to stay with you and I'm going to come round to our other speakers in just a moment. But if I could ask for you, in 30 seconds or so, if we reflect on our responsibility as children of the earth living in this century with the data, the technology, the advancements, everything that we have that we acknowledge can help with this evolution that you pointed to. In 30 seconds or less, could you share with us 3 things, 3 behaviors, 3 pursuits we can each apply ourselves to the harmonious evolution of our existence and of our journey on this earth?
No, I can't. But, well, to be more conscious of everything that is happening, to see the life present everywhere around us, that's already a step in the right direction. Now, I'm not sure about the ultimate step, but, right now the sun is shining brightly, which it hardly ever does in Belgium or in England. And, let's just enjoy that and cultivate it and proceed from there. I mean, again, I don't think there is a serious problem. I don't think the earth is disappearing, is going to waste or so. We are quite well able to manage. And so, you see, I don't see any big problem that we're facing. There are small problems, there are manageable problems, the energy problem and so on and so on. But nevertheless, I'm confident in human beings to do it right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A lovely uplifting message to end that segment on. Dr. Nomagugu, we'll come to you now. In 30 seconds or less, 3 things that we can pursue to live in harmony with our world.
Yes, our world is full of mountains, plants, human beings, rivers, and whatever. It will be very wise that we respect all of these because we cannot live without one another. Some people can wonder how, but we know that our food comes from the soil and the rain nourishes. So we need to live harmoniously by respecting nature. That's all.
Thank you so much. Ramji, over to you. Final question. What are up to 3 things that we can pursue to, see the divinity in all and live in harmony with the world as children of the earth?
One thing is we can start worshipping the nature. So create some new rituals where we can start worshipping the everything in the world. Worship creates the respect, one. Second is that called tuning with the things coming up. So any challenges coming, how to I've been tuned with that one. So tuning is the second thing I feel will be very much useful. And the third thing I already mentioned about that one, that creating these common groups, the groups, smaller groups or smaller or bigger groups, having the same nature, same capacity or same nature, same inclination, those creating small groups, in the Toynbee said that the creative organized minorities, small groups, that will develop the future world. And like Dr. L said, I'm very optimistic, very positive, and Earth is going to sink, is going to have a prosperous future.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each of you, a lovely panel for this morning's exploration and discussion. I certainly have learned a lot, and I hope all of you tuning in from home, wherever you are in the world, have also enjoyed this discussion. To try and sum up, I think this is dangerous territory, but I'm going to give it a go. It seems that we have explored the theme of how do we move from conquering the earth, conquering nature, to cultivating a relationship of care, where we can explore our oneness and overcome our alienation. This requires discipline, us to embrace evolution and move forward with nature, and all the while enjoy the journey with joy and see the interconnectedness of everything that we see and everything that we experience. This has been a delightful 1 hour. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you will stay tuned for the rest of the conference today. Thank you, and namaste.
Thank you so much, Drishti, and to all of our speakers. I do feel we are so blessed to have such knowledgeable people amongst us who really do have not just that wisdom, but that positivity on how we can embrace the forthcoming future and how to take this wisdom into the modern days. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. So next up, we do have a 2-minute break, and we will be back with another talk. So do stay tuned in. Again, grab yourself a drink and be back with us in just 2 minutes. See you soon. Thank you for joining us again. We are now halfway through our conference. And remember, this is only one of 3 of the regional conference that we've organized this weekend. So this morning we had a conference by the Indo-Pacific region, which you can catch if you go onto our YouTube page or even via the Hoover app. The recording is there from this morning's program. And also we have the Americas program coming up at 6 p.m. UK time. So again, please do join and learn about all the rest of the cultures around the world. Today, at the moment, we're focusing more on Europe and Africa. So coming up next is our speaker, Kostas Kahagias, who will be speaking on Hellenic ethnic religion, a religion of logic and humanism. Costas was born in Athens, Greece. He has been interested in a restoration of the Hellenic ethnic religion since early 1990s. In 1997, he joined a newly founded YSEE, Supreme Council of Ethnic Hellenes, as a supporting member in all its actions, such as lectures, rituals, and protests. He became a Secretary General in 2019. Costas has written dozens of articles, given lectures and interviews on topics related to archaeology and philosophy. I would now like to pass you over to Costas. Remember, you can submit your questions, any questions that you may have for Costas, via our Hoover app. So please do go onto the agenda, find the actual event that we're hosting right now, and within that you will see a chat function. So I'll pass it over to you now, Costas. Thank you.
We asked to play a video before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we start? Okay. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be here. We emerge as beings through the ocean of the eternal being, and the entirety of our life is merely a ripple on the surface of this ontological sea. Afterwards, we immerse ourselves again in it, in that, in that the Greeks called cosmos, a word that in Greek signifies the ornate and orderly part of the infinite, a real jewel enjoyed by mortal and immortal entities alike. We come into this world with the consciousness that allow us to perceive our mortality and have senses that allow us to perceive the environment around us. We have a purpose in the manifested world, even if we do not realize it, and we contribute through our life in maintaining the eternal being. And this is how the human journey through time begins. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this presentation on the worldview of the Hellenic ethnic religion. For the Hellenists, the cosmos is eternal, timeless, self-created, without an external creative source, indestructible, dominated by necessity, and permitted by reason. The world, though perfect, evolves internally until it reaches a new orderly perfection. Its inner parts interact through two principles, the passive principles of matter and the active principle of reason. The cosmos does not move linearly. It has no beginning and no prescribed end. It moves in a circular direction. It self-ignites, self-destroys, and it's recreated periodically. Κόσμο των δε των αυτών απάντων, ούτε της θεών ούτε ανθρώπων επίησε, αλλά είναι αεί και εστίν και έστε πήρα ίζων, απτόμενο μέτρα και αποσβενήμενον μέτρα. Which means that this cosmos was not created by either God or human, but has always existed, exists, and will exist as eternal fire, which light up in moderation and goes out in moderation, as the philosopher Heraclitus very simply described it. The Hellenic ethnic religion does not have a foundational time or a mortal founder to whom a dogma was revealed. It's a creation that emerged together with the consciousness of human mortality and evolves in parallel with Greek culture. It is a language and a code of communication between the Greeks and their gods. The Hellenic religion permits all pre-Christian civilization and guides it to a fuller and safer knowledge of divine things in very subsequent cultural creation. Our religion, which had been persecuted with enormous violence by Christianity, believes that human beings carry within them the part of the universal divine reason, that the Greeks called logos, that gives them conscience, rational judgment, a recognition of the sacred that exists in everything. It is the necessary spiritual asset that can be cultivated in order to converse with the gods and to introspect the world logically without denying its sacredness. The reason that dwells with us in the immortal part of the soul that give us the ability of speech, imagination, abstract thought, conception of ideas, contemplation, and finally provide us with the ability to philosophize. After our biological body ceases to exist, this part of the universal soul that accompany us throughout our life is reunited with the whole from where it originated. Another result of the logical perception of the cosmos is the rational reception of the gods. The gods have emerged from the true being as a simple multiplication of itself into separate entities, and for this reason they retain all their qualities, which are immortality, infinity, and knowledge. The mission of the gods, the mission of the gods is the establishment and maintenance of the unity and the order of the cosmos. Thus, the true gods are perfect beings that impose order and possess immortality and knowledge. They infuse the world without any abstraction by acting on it. They are subject to the natural laws, and they serve and they partake in the eternal rebirth and continuous synthesis and decomposition of the forms. The myth of Prometheus contains all supporting evidence that the Hellenic religion goes hand in hand with human evolution and culture. Let's start with fire. This gift that appears suddenly on Earth, usual after a lighting, coming from the sky, the abode of the gods, acquires a special presence in human life. Fire, fire marks the transition from wild to civilized, from animal to human. This transition happens through the consumption of cooked food, the evolution of technology, and with defense and protection. Fire is a precious weapon, an aid that comes from the sky, a gift from the gods that facilitates the survival of humans and at the same time lay the foundation of civilization and technology. This gift from the gods is given out of kindness and human species without self-interest. The only thing that is required in the ancient general principle that governs the relationship between gods and people. A gift for a gift. It is the duty of humans to remember their guardians and to sacrifice the origin of their bounty in their name. This reciprocity demonstrates that its value in recognized and thus lays the foundation of what will later be recorded in Stoic philosophy as humanism. A second religion innovation introduced with the gift of fire in the change of sacrificial ethos. Fire mediates between the world of the mortals and the world of the gods, transporting the offered sacrifices to the sky through smoke. This new sacrificial practice also indicates the shift of the orientation of worship from the chthonic to the celestial Olympian, of wisdom, moderation, and virtue. This change in sacrificial ethos show that Greek worship is not based on dogma, but has a dynamic and a static side. The static side relates to the indestructible and eternal world of the gods. The dynamic side relates to the way of perceiving the world of the gods, and the expression of this perception is meaning that shape the cultural reality and the daily ethos. Fire not only lights a night path, but also casts its, its light to new inventions, new constructions, and new artifacts. Fire has the power of processing the metals, dividing them from the earth's solid pieces to create jewelry, worshipping god statues, tools, and weapons. This metal processing provides man with a wide range of capabilities, but at the same time, man runs the risk of going beyond of his own limits, leading himself to hybris, a state of no virtue, where human is degraded to be a wild creature, immoral and surrendered to its immodesty. Prometheus, along with fire, brings people the remembrance of hybris, which remain hidden in the shadow, expecting humans to cross their limits. In the absence of virtue, technology turns, turns to enslaving mechanism. The gift of fire to the people causes the divine punishment of Prometheus, the offender, who was sentenced to be eternal and chained to a rock at Caucasus Mountain. However, taking a deeper look at things and getting rid of our monotheistic preconceptions, which consider it as God Zeus's revenge. This story may deliver a different aspect than one of those who create this myth, Setiki, as unexplained with teaching at the school of the Hellenic city-state. Their aspect of Prometheus' punishment is the most valid one. Though the codices of the Hellenic world and regulate its operation, consequently, the number of the gods they set and guard the law of the universe, by which they themselves are also confined, not because they are powerless, but due to a sense of respect for the pre-agreed law that governs the heavens. On the contrary, if the gods show favor to a particular human being, breaking the laws of existence they themselves set, that would definitely be a sign of weakness. Another reason that made gods not to intervene to human destiny, giving immortality for instance, is that by doing so, they wouldn't disturb the order that calls death for every man born. Gods, along with a self-sufficient being, have given people the ability to be immortal only when they don't break the pre-agreed law, either for better or worse, but stay within limits, just like the gods do. In complete contrast to that its claims of monotheism, our gods, the gods of polytheism, are so exactly because they set the law and the need above any human weakness, and by doing so, they force the Hellenists to overcome every obstacle and reach perfection by struggling to achieve works of greatness. Polytheism happened when the seeing of the man who seek an explanation of the world look upward to find it, where we encounter gods acting, coming down to the world of mortal beings. This type forms a variety of morphic representation of the divine beings, as well as the initial causes. At this point, a complex of relation and interaction takes place between the mortal beings that look at the sky, searching for answers, and of the immortal gods that act in the cosmos. The divine acting, which different from one place to another, in combination with human sins, which also vary in each land, gives birth to this remarkable variety of polytheistic traditions. Acting along with sins are the stimulus for create and different tradition and social efforts. Through their distinct mythologic narrations, through their theology, language, and ritual use of symbolism, through the different way society functions. The universe divinity creates several ethnic religions and nations. Polytheism shapes ethnism, for it is the initial cause for every ethnos. Although each ethnos speak a different language, all of them describe the eternal being. Therefore, each ethnic approaches is accepted as valid. We cannot define that an ethnos actually is without considering polytheism, which constantly brings our ethnic gods before us. Polytheism marks the time that free religious beliefs contribute to the development of the multiplied forms of ethnism, giving life to what we call the ethnosphere. Our call for resetting the ethnic religion to each and every country that suffered a violent imposition of Christianization or Islamization does not mean we seek to revive the past as a mere copy, but indicates the effort to overcome the cultural impasse of our era by resorting to the logos of the being and the unsharp past sacred offices itself. Thank you very much for your attention. If someone has
Hi,
a question,
Costas. Thank you so much for the video presentation. It was definitely interesting, and thank you for your talk as well. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A. However, for those who have submitted a question, we would love for you to answer them offline, so we can definitely present those questions to you, forward them on, and we can answer the audience's question via the Woover app. Hope that's okay. So now we will go to an extended 5 minutes break. I appreciate that all of us have been sitting for quite a long time, so do take a bit of a stretch. And we want you back for the final session for today, and with lots of energy and enthusiasm, and we definitely want to hear from you as well. So we will now have a 5 minutes break, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Welcome back to our final session of the 7th International Conference and Gathering of Elders, hosted by ICCS. So we've had a wonderful program so far, lots of interesting discussions. And now we want to take you over to our final speaker for today. And this is Dr. Przemysław Kro. Dr. Kro is from Poland. He did his PhD at Gdańsk University of Technology. He is a priest and leader of the Society of Pomeranian Rodnowe Janta, founded in 2010. The group's priority is internal spiritual development, focused on the living spirituality and experience of gods and ancestors. It will also focus on cultural learnings and social activities aimed at promoting knowledge about Slavic tradition and culture. So remember, if you want to ask any question to Dr. Kro, please do submit your questions into the Weaver app, and we'll be more than happy to present them to Dr. Kro after his 20 minutes talk. So he will be speaking about A Way to the Gods, Contemporary Approach to Slavic Theology. I'll pass it over to you now, Dr. Kro. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a great introduction. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So now I will share my screen with a presentation I have for you. A Way to the Gods is a contemporary theological approach in my association of Pomeranian Rodnowers Jantar. And as some of you may be not very familiar with Rodnowery, so nowadays continuation of Slavic faith, I will briefly introduce the sources on which we base. And then I will come to the Way to the Gods and its basic concepts, which you can see listed here. The animism, which is the very basic foundation for this, the nature and its role from our point of view. Also the myths and their meaning for shaping the correct world order. And the concepts more connected with the man itself, on the community and the culture, along with this the ethics, which we try to apply to our lives. And the smooth coming to the concluding part, the most important from today's conference point of view. So the soul and its goal from our point of view, of course. And the last part, which is the cosmos and the man, referring the role of interference between the man and the universe itself. But coming to the beginning, the sources of contemporary Rodnowery, we learn about the original Slavic faith upon some texts like chronicles and travelers' relations. We do have quite a lot of these. The chronicles, in fact, mainly describe the wars the neighboring nations conducted between themselves and the Slavs. And the travelers' relations also bring more information about the local customs. We also have some missionary literature and sermons from Christianization period, as we unfortunately do not have writing records from the pagan Slavs themselves. However, we do have some archaeological sources like statues. The one you can see on my presentation is so-called Światowid from River's Bridge. And as you may see, it is ornamented with a pattern of some characters here. And it is believed to represent the idea of a threefold universe. Among other archaeological treasures, I have to mention the jewelry and weapons. Among these, the most important or may gaining the most interest recently are knife scabbards, as their rich ornamentation also is believed to carry rich mythological meanings. But in fact, the main body of our sources for Slavic faith revival is the folklore, of course, bringing the celebrations of annual festivals and social rites, the rites of passage from youth to adult, the marriage and the funerals, etc., which show us the ritualized lifestyle, but also the very important part, the oral culture, having the song, folk tales, and similar texts, which in their general body form something we can call the language worldview, and we can use it to decode the way of thinking our ancestors had, but also other forms of spiritual culture. Among these, the customs, beliefs, the medicine, which was rich in magical actions, and demonology, which referred to, I suppose, the animistic thinking of our ancestors. And in the picture here, you can see a sketch of Adam Czarnocki. It was his original name, but he is more widely known as Zorian Dołęga Chodakowski. This man is considered to be a pioneer of Slavic faith revival, as he was the first one to seriously start gathering the folk heritage, the folk songs and tales. And he openly affirmed the importance of the Slavic faith for our identity. And from Zorian Dołęga Chodakowski, it started, in fact, to appear in Poland. I'm talking specifically about the Poland, to appear people coming back to the to our original heritage. In 19th century, there was an organization, Ziewonia, which directly referred to the heritage of Chodakowski. Also, 19th century poets, the poets were not in fact the pagans themselves, or in most of them did not recognize themselves like this, but they started to include the folk elements into their art. And quite important character is Roman Zmorski, who also started gathering, he also was involved in gathering and analyzing the folk material. However, the more active Slavic movement started just before World War II, where there started some organizations like Zadruga or Światowit Venerators Circle. And among these organizations, I have to mention the Hornet Heart tribe. Its leader and you can say a chief, Stanisław Szukalski, is visible here. Hornet Heart tribe was in fact not strictly religious organizations. It was a group of artists. Szukalski himself was mainly a sculptor. However, he also left quite a lot of drawings and paintings. And Hornet Heart tribe affirmed creating a purely Polish national branch of art. But the most important from our point of view, I suppose, is Franciszek Frączek, who was the longest living member of Hornet Heart tribe. This organization is already dead, in fact. And Franciszek Frączek openly affirmed also importance of original Slavic beliefs. I also would like to mention Professor Maria Janion, who was unfortunately deceased quite recently. I put a dot at her surname as far as I know. She did not recognize herself as a Rodnover. However, she made a very important statement that the baptism of Poland, along with huge destruction of our tradition, left unhealed scar on the Polish hearts. And in fact, she also spoke about the importance of Slavic tradition for Poland. And currently we have several religious associations existing in Poland. Some of these you have listed here. I had a problem with translating Polish term for religious association, which is in fact equivalent from the low point of view to the church. And smaller one organization, the religious association, and there are something 10 operating in Poland currently, I suppose. And one of these is the Yantar, which I do represent. And we also participate in registration of root. On the next slide, you have a photo of Franciszek Frączek, about whom I have mentioned a bit earlier. And one of his oil paintings, the Grove of Sventowit. And there you can see a Catholic priest chopping one of the holy trees. And this painting is specific to Frączek's view on Christianization, and as he also recognized the original Slavic faith as most important for the Poles. But coming to the nowadays concepts and the main topic of my presentation, the way to the gods, it's a contemporary system proposed of Slavic theology. It's a more current state of thinking in Yantar, in fact, as this is specific for us in Yantar, not a set of necessary dogmas. Despite being theocentric with personally recognized gods, it is strongly rooted in animistic worldview. And it is considered to form a spiritual continuity among entire being. And we assume proper, which means a healthy balance between the nature and the human culture. Culture in its widest sense, so along with all technical actions also. And from our point of view, fundamental meaning is assigned to the actual spiritual experience. However, this experience must be rooted in ancestral traditions, which is considered for us as a source on which we can build our experience, and the frame and the kind of a map helping us to move within it. And coming back.
I feel that, you know, just conscious of time and the fact, obviously, it's such an interesting presentation, and we do have some questions that we'd love for you to answer. Is that okay?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the first question we have is. So we've got a question from Katie, who's actually said that she's never really heard of the Slavic faith before today. So why do you think there is little knowledge outside of the immediate countries?
Okay, I suppose I have also before this presentation received signals that most of attendees may be unfamiliar with Rodno Valley. That's reason why I put these first slides into it. I suppose that the main reason lies in lack of original sources. As I mentioned, we do not have original pagan written texts for Slavic faith. But also, I suppose that we are slightly next to the mainstream of modern nowadays European culture, and thus we have a worse, let's say, PR, let's say, than Druids and Norwegian and Scandinavian mythos has, as the Scandinavian mythos and Celtic ones, they in fact came into the popular culture, and then these are well recognized by almost everybody. In fact, in a quite falsified way, many times. We know that when a popular culture takes some element, it easily modifies it on its own needs. And I suppose that's why, more or less, the Slavic culture is less recognized by most of people. Recently,
yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, we have a question from Akshay, and what they're asking is, what are you doing for your youth to follow your own tradition?
okay.
What's the youth engagement like for your for this tradition currently?
Okay. So currently, Yantar is one of organizations which main role is to organize and conduct celebrations of festivals of our year circle, but also not Yantar specifically, but all these organizations are involved in organizing lectures in schools, for example, and trying to cooperate with cultural organizations like museums to help to propagate at least knowledge on the Slavic traditions. As I mentioned, Professor Maria Janion, she also raised the problem of lack of consciousness of own identity, in fact, coming from ancestors' heritage. And these are the problems we are most facing nowadays and trying to fix.
Great, that's fantastic. Now, how do you balance your tradition and modern lifestyle?
Okay, as I mentioned during my presentation, we put the most weight to the own spiritual experience. It is, I suppose, quite easier for an animistic worldview, as we recognize the living spirit even if everyday use tools and items. So we can try to approach them similarly as our tradition gave us our ancestors approach the spirits of nature and in fact spirits of their households. But in fact, some of Rodnovers complain that their, let's say, everyday life lacks, from their point of view, spirituality, as modern times just take us, require too much focus from us on everyday affairs. And in fact, the main points at which we celebrate our spirituality are the celebrations of annual rituals and the social rites, in fact.
Right, okay, thank you. Now, Katie has asked a question. Would you say that the Slavic faith incorporates ancestor worship?
Could you repeat, please? Or
would you say the Slavic faith incorporates ancestor worship?
Yes, of course, it incorporates, that's the word I didn't understand. the ancestors worship. We have, in fact, several rituals focused on the ancestors cult. The most important of them is in beginning of November. It is called Dziady in Polish, which you can directly translate as ancestors, but also the spring celebrations incorporate worshipping them. The ancestors are recognized as our guides, and we often ask them for their support. And in fact, in Yantar, we invite the spirits to participate in each of the celebration that we conduct.
Excellent, excellent. So, sorry, I'm just finding the question. So, are Slavic traditions closely related to the Nordic and the Germanic traditions? I think it might mention something a bit similar.
Yes, in fact, the Indo-European comparative mythology is a basic tool for recognizing the Slavic mythology. And I can say that these are closely related. In fact, geographically, there's no great reason that it could be much separately treated. And you can find quite a lot of parallels among our main mythos, the struggle between the Thunderer and the Serpent. Also, the ancestors worship, I suppose, is quite universal for our cultures. So, yes, it is obviously not the same. These are, I suppose, I missed the word, the separate cultures, but they belong to the one, they are branches of the one tree of European or Indo-European cultures.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Sorry, we're getting a lot of questions in, and just thought this is a great opportunity to have this interaction. And I mean, if you do want to say a few closing words, we're more than happy to have that before then. So I'll just go back to a couple of the questions that we have received. So I've got Maya here saying, thank you for your presentation. May you suggest some resources for further reading of the philosophical foundation on your traditions, such as a relationship with nature, health, wholeness, interhuman relationships. So where is it that they can find these resources? Are things available on the internet, or would you recommend certain books or authors?
Well, in fact, most of books I can recommend may be hardly available for you, as these are Polish books, in fact. Some Russian issues are also, mainly Ivanov and Toporov from Russia are valuable. However, I would advise to avoid at least initial part searching in the internet itself. Not maybe looking for the books in the internet, but I would advise to avoid pages describing the Slavic mythology, as due to scarcity of sources, there are a lot of people who try to, let's say, fix the gaps on their own and to create some own propositions with not much base in the source material. So first of all, I would advise to seek for some scientific journals on religions and Slavic mythology, and then come to the books.
Okay, so you made a really interesting point there, the scarcity of the resources. Now, what is it that your group can do to kind of help towards this? I mean, have you embraced the social media platform? Is there certain things, ways that you're trying to educate people about the Slavic tradition to make sure that misunderstanding or misrepresentation isn't happening, which is easily done, especially in the world of the World Wide Web? So what is it? How are you tackling that?
The one of the, let's say, initiatives of the Polish Rodnoverse community is calendar of Rodnovers, which is mainly issued in Polish. However, it was also translated to some foreign languages and sold outside the Poland. So it is how we tried also to come out from own homeland also with our knowledge. And but in fact, at this stage, we focus on bringing our tradition alive again in our own country. That's the stage that we are now, in fact.
Yeah, okay, no, absolutely. And so I think I read in your bio that you're organizing a lot of events and things to obviously pass that knowledge. And so one of the questions that we've received is, could you tell us more about how members of your community seek to engage the wealth of natural heritage in Poland? And I think you made reference to that, slight reference to it in your bio as well. So maybe if you could expand on that, how is it that you're connecting to the heritage?
According organization, the events, in fact, these are what I mentioned earlier. So some members of Yantar organize the lectures or workshops with kids in the schools, also sometimes for teaching them about the Slavic heritage. We also plan at this stage some acts connected with protection of some natural places, especially important for our group, especially. And in fact, we are at the stage when we start to operate in a more open public sphere. And we also cooperate, especially with one of Sopot Museum, Archaeological Museum, with some initiatives which allow to promote the original Slavic heritage.
Brilliant. And we've got a question from Ravi, who's asked, what is the biggest misconception we hold about the Slavic traditions?
Misconception in what understanding?
So maybe you already made reference to like the resources which are not true to the Slavic tradition. So what is there in those that's not making it a valid or credible source?
I suppose that in such understanding, the main issue we have to face now is maybe not even the lack of resources, because we lack the resources from the original historical period. We have the resource as the folklore, which I mentioned, and it is the quite a good base for us, as it preserved a lot of original tradition. The main issue, in fact, lies in modern times, where because in Poland the Rodnover movement is quite young, in fact, especially comparing to Lithuania or other countries with longer traditions of ethnic faith revival. So we are in fact forming the contemporary Rodnovery and building our social recognition.
Excellent. So what we'd love from you, Dr. Crow, is like some closing remarks on the topic. It'll be great to have a few words from you before we end this session.
Okay, so about closing remarks, maybe I will just go to the last slide of my presentation, which also was a summary of what I was intending to say. So the first of all, everything that helps us to bring us closer to the divine, to our gods, is considered as good. Also, the animism concept I mentioned earlier induces a great responsibility, as each other being may be considered as self-conscious and actively interacting with us. And we have to recognize the tradition of our ancestors as a guidepost and a background for our nowadays experience and actions. So it is why we should preserve it as a map for our nowadays experience. However, I didn't manage to say it earlier, but we also recognize the nature, despite we do not venerate the nature itself for its own, we recognize it as a hierophany, allowing, in fact, all people to deduce about the holy, and it is the basic source for entire being in its most wide meaning. And in fact, the human culture roles, culture from capital letters, so the one supporting the good, supporting coming closer in soul's maturity among the gods, is to boost individuals' growth in this soul's maturity sense, and to preserve such growth conditions for the entire community. I mentioned also at some moment that the soul's goal we recognize is its rise, self-improvement to the assumptively achieved state of divinity, and it is more better compared to gaining maturity than any kind of moral prize or anything like this. And it is a straight conclusion from our treat for the entire being a spiritual continuity, which includes entire being. So not only what the biology recognizes as the living, but also man, inanimate objects like our tools, households, but this entire spiritual continuity includes the gods towards which we tried to come closer also. So I suppose it's everything I could tell you in this time. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crow. That was definitely, something that we've all learned. It's not a tradition that many of us are familiar with. So just you giving that insightful information has definitely raised so much curiosity amongst us. And that just goes by all the questions that we've been receiving as well. So thank you to everyone who's contributing and want some more knowledge from our expert speakers. So thank you. That was Dr. Crow. Now, it's been such an informative and inspiring day for all of us. I think there's something we've all learned. We've definitely been informed. We've definitely been inspired. And I'm hoping that we're picking up the essence of being instructed what to do as well, or where we see ourselves and what we can do to help these ancient traditions, the revival of them, and obviously how we can connect to these for our modern day problems. So it's been definitely an interesting session. Now, I would like to pass you over to Dr. Jonathan Woolley. Jonathan is one of the coordinators of this event and is a volunteer for ICCS UK. Jonathan will be sharing his closing remarks. This will be followed by a closing ceremony conducted by Kere Frank from Shamanic Association Norway. Kere represents the Sami tradition and will perform a traditional blessing. So I would like to pass it over to you now, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Paula, and it is an honour to have the opportunity to speak today. And it's to be invited to conclude such a wonderful, exciting and interesting session with such a wide range of of speakers from so many different traditions and so many parts of the world. I'd like to begin by just saying thank you to all of our speakers, to Judy Ling Wong for an inspiring introductory survey of the kind of global context in which we are all living right now, and also a beautiful opening prayer, to our panel, led by Drishti Mai and Doctors Elst, Nomagugu and Ram, who led a fascinating discussion about how we can sort of deal with some of the kind of historical, environmental and social pressures that our traditions are all dealing with at this time. And then followed by two fantastic, broad-ranging lectures by Mr. Chachagias and Dr. Kroll, who gave us both an insight into Hellenism and Rodnovery, respectively, and also helping understand how these two specific traditions are dealing with the challenges that our panel discussed. So it's just absolutely fantastic and really, really wonderful. I think what really sort of got me thinking a little bit today was this image of the fires that Judy began with as we spoke today. I myself visited Australia very recently, so not this Christmas, but the Christmas before, right in the midst of the fires. And I remember very vividly walking along the beaches of Sydney and laying my hand in the sacred waters of the Pacific and finding ash specks from the forests burning inland. And it was a bizarre situation to be in such a beautiful place and yet reminded by the impact of the modern world on our living, vibrant, sacred planet. And I also went up to a particular area of Australia near Mount Warning. And this is a place I'd always wanted to go to because of a film that I always strongly associated with my journey with this form of spirituality, which is a film called Fern Gully, about a sacred rainforest full of fairies. And those fairies are threatened by a demon of pollution, whose presence is first revealed in the film by smoke over this mountain called Mount Warning in Australia. And when I was there, first time I'd ever been to Mount Warning and seen the place where this cartoon was set, there was smoke from fires over Mount Warning. And I felt that there was a weird, strange symbolism to that for me. And so to hear those same themes being discussed today, because what's very clear is that the science and the elder wisdom both agree that we are in a moment of profound cultural, spiritual, and ecological crisis. And though there might be a great deal of hope for us all to work together to rise to the challenge and to address the problems that we're all facing, there is a real need for us to work together now and to build those common solutions. And it seems that the common thread through all of the talks that have been led today is accessibility, promoting access to our ancient traditions, making sure that people have the resources they need to explore and to discover the wisdom held in our traditions for themselves, whether or not that's educational resources in schools, such as we saw in Mr. Kachagias's talk, or providing other resources online and information about ancient traditions and so on. There's a wealth of ways we can do it. And as Judy said at the beginning, really the wisdom and the power of nature, it's the same in both cases. If you introduce people to wisdom, if you introduce people to nature, they will do the work for you, and they will help achieve the kinds of changes within people's hearts that we're looking to accomplish. So once again, I just want to say a great thank you to all of our speakers, and a great thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for another a schedule of talks and panel discussions, which I hope will be every bit as exciting as today. And I now hand over for our closing prayer. Thank you.
Hello. I'm not seeing myself on the screen. Am I on? Sorry.
Yes, you are.
Greetings, all. I'm greeting you from the Arctic region of Sapmi. I have been given the honor to do a closing prayer, but first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers and all the people behind the scenes for making this such a beautiful, beautiful day. And lastly, I want to thank the participants who have been watching, because even if you are digitally present, you contribute to the overall feeling with your energy and your present. So may he who comes with the wind send blessings to us all. And I would like to call upon the ancestor who support every step we take. And I really believe that they are looking upon us and smiling right now. May they continue to support us and guide us, seeing the good work that is done here. I often pray using the drum, so I would like to invite you to join me in prayer and give thanks and prayers for this day together. Now, every time we light the sacred fire, it is the same fire that's been burning since the time of dawn. And it's the same sacred fire that is lit up all over the world. Today, there's been rekindled a fire in our heart. And I pray that we bring this fire with us in our heart when we continue to do the good work over this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Kari, for a wonderful closing ceremony. It was so calming just to hear that sound of wind and the drums. So thank you so much. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers who have joined us today, and a special thanks to you who have been attending this conference in the comfort of your home. But it's just great to have you here listening to us and listening to all the fantastic speakers today. Now, we have a great program lined up for you tomorrow. We have a talk on how ancient traditions inform our role in modern society. We also have 2 panel discussions, one which is on sustainable living, and the second is a special youth discussion titled Future Leaders, How Young People Are Embracing Ancient Wisdom. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. We would love to see you again tomorrow. And lastly, don't forget, today's events haven't finished yet. Just because Indo-Pacific have and Europe and Africa have, we still have our 3rd time zone, which is the Americas. Yep, so the Americas program will start at 6 p.m. UK time. So please join to learn more about the traditions from across the pond. Now, we hope to see you tomorrow, but you can still continue the conversation via the Woover app. Please do connect to other attendees and start your own churning of thoughts. What did you think of the talks, of the presentations? Do you have any further questions? Definitely, that's the platform to get onto and raise all your queries to us and to our speakers. So thank you so much for joining. Namaste to you and my blessings as well. I hope you have a lovely day and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.